All right, Mopar people, welcome back to the channel. I'm just Mopar Joe. I want to start this by saying, please, I encourage your comments under this video. I hope you have a nice dialogue with each other and myself, but don't say anything to demean another person. It is totally fine to disagree with what I'm saying, but I'm not going to be speaking in total absolutes, meaning that my way is the only way, the correct way. So now that I've said all that, let's talk about the Mopar Tax. A lot of people won't even acknowledge it. There's no Mopar Tax. That's an opinion, okay? Just like this is my opinion of what the Mopar Tax is. I have in my lifetime actually taught economics. I'm a school teacher. I'm not teaching anymore, thank goodness, but I taught for several years before I started doing any YouTube stuff. In economics, they have terms, and I want to share some of those with you today, and I'm going to link that to actual Mopar stuff. So I like Mopars, and I can teach economics. I might as well share what I know about it. So here's my whiteboard that is a sheet of cardboard. We'll start with supply factors. I'm going to go through these in less than 2 minutes, so don't skip ahead. Production capacity is like the amount that can be made in a certain amount of time or a limit of time. So they can, we're going to talk about Edelbrock in a minute and an Edelbrock intake. So Edelbrock, say they can only produce 100 intakes in a day, whatever the number is, that's their capacity that they can produce, production capacity. Production cost, how much does it cost them to produce the item? And you're going to see in production cost, a lot of companies are outsourcing things to China for many reasons, but they're doing it partially to keep the production cost down to be able to sell it at a lower rate. There's other factors in that, including government politics. We're not talking about that today. We're talking about economics. Competitors, is there more than one person selling the item? Availability of materials, can they get the stuff? If you'll remember camcores, during COVID, people were freaking out because they couldn't get cams. Supply chains, same thing. We could talk about COVID, but COVID is over. So supply chains back up. There's freighters sitting off the coast of California that can't be unloaded. That's just an example. The supply chain is stopped there. They can't get the supplies to make the stuff. So that all these factors increase or have a relationship with supply and demand. The demand factors, product price, how much does it cost? Buyer income. So if you are a lower income hot rodder or lower income Mopar person, you're not going to spend and buy the most expensive heads. You might buy Speedmaster heads, or you may get your stock heads rebuilt. Buyer preference, you only want to, some people say they're only going to buy American. So they will, because of that, it could change their demand. For instance, they have to buy Edelbrock because they love Edelbrock. They've always ran Edelbrock. It's a preference of the person. Okay. Available substitutes, we're going to talk about in a minute. Complementary products. An example would be if the price of gas goes up, Edelbrock might actually sell fewer carburetors because people aren't out driving their hot rods. They can't afford to. That's just an example. So two items that complement each other. Gas, fuel, and a carburetor go together. Okay, a carburetor and an intake go together. And then the market size. We're also going to talk about market size in just a second. Let me show you that stuff. See, I brought our whiteboard over here. So step one, I have a Torker 383 intake. This is a Torker 2 440 intake. Let's make believe for a minute that they're both made for a 440. I didn't have a Torker 440 intake here, but I wanted to show you. So I bought this on Marketplace for $160 delivered to my house. It's probably 40 years old. It looks to be in okay shape. I can clean it up and put a little bit of time into it. This Torker 2 intake is going on our Dyno 440 build. It's $375 before tax and shipping. So call it $400 if you want to. So the difference is $400 versus $160. Okay, we're getting back to that in a minute. Edelbrock had to produce this. So our product price was $375, call it $400. If your buyer income, example, if you wanted to be cheap like I am, you might shop Marketplace and find a less expensive intake like this. So buyer preference, they're both still Edelbrocks, so you still got to choose the brand that you wanted. Available substitutes, this is what we call in economics a substitute good, okay? So you can run the Torquer 1 intake. If it was a 440 intake, you could run that intake on the 440 and be just fine. You may never, inside your car driving it every day, you'd probably never notice a difference. But this one is supposed to be a step up and a step better. There's an article out there on that, that Motor Trend did. A lot of people love the Torquers. We're not focused on what kind of intake it is right now. We're focused on the economic portion. So I'm trying to stay on track. Complementary products, same thing. If the price of gas goes sky high, there'd probably be fewer intakes sold, either one, because people aren't driving their hot rods as much and building stuff as much. Okay, so those are things that can affect demand factors. Market size, the other thing I wanted to tell you, a Torquer 2 intake right now for a Chevrolet, small block Chevrolet, is $267 pre-tax, okay? So $100 cheaper. So what that means is, if we go back up to supply factors, Edelbrock, in a day, if they're making 100 intakes, they probably want to make 80 of them to go with the small block Chevrolets and make 5 to go to a big block Mopar or small block Mopar. Production costs, okay, it essentially costs the same or similar to make either one of them if they have the correct molds and everything's already in place. The production cost can be higher if it's a newer product or something new that they're coming out with and they have to totally retool and dye their whole equipment and machining process. Competitors. So example on the Torquer 2. The small block Chevrolet, you can go out and buy 10 different Chinese variants of a Torquer 2, and that causes the price to actually go down on the Torquer 2. Edelbrock has to keep their prices. It kind of helps keep their prices in check because there's other suitable or available substitutes. We're not talking about quality. We're not talking about anything. We're talking about they're available to be bought. I did a video the other day on these Chinese headers from DNA Motoring. These were like $180 shipped to my door. Basically that, whatever it was. And I know they're Chinese and we get that. But if you wanted to buy a similar set of truck headers from a quote American company, and I say American because the company is in America, but it's likely that the product is made overseas. So many reasons for that, but I'm talking about economics. So this is a available substitute for the $600 set of ceramic coated hookers. Okay. I'm just showing you that as an example. So let's get back to our Mopar Tax for a minute. When the price of this intake goes up and it's $400, the available substitute that you can find on Marketplace, the value of this is actually higher. It goes up with this, okay? Meaning that if you have a used intake, like this Torquer 383, and you know now it costs someone $400 to go buy this new, you could probably ask $250 or $300 for this. Like, don't go crazy and think you're going to get $400 for this. You can get more money for this, obviously way more than it was when it was brand new, right? So this is actually increased in value with its age. It's amazing. A lot of parts don't do that. A lot of things in economics don't do that, right? So this increase in its value, not to account for inflation. Okay, I haven't talked about inflation yet. But these sort of parts in the Mopar world are available out there. Sometimes you get a better deal than others. So this is going to need some work. But if this was perfectly cleaned up, somebody asked $300, you could get that. It depends on who's buying it and whatever. A prime example of something that suffers the Mopar tax maybe more than others would be the early generation Hemis, like 392, 354, whatever. Also the 318 poly. A lot of people don't build polys because in order to get a good intake and good parts to go in your poly, you're going to pay 2 or 3 times the amount for that Mopar engine. So I'm going to try to relate these items to our little chart here that I have beautifully drawn. So the law of supply and demand states if a product has a high demand and a low supply, the price will increase. Okay. So high demand, low supply, our price would go up. There's your price up here. I know the chart looks goofy. Conversely, or opposite of that, is if there's a low demand, right? Low demand and a high supply, the price will decrease. Okay, so this being price, low demand, our price goes down, right? Also, if you're selling a lot of the items, so I wrote that down here. If they're selling a lot of the items, the price also is down, right? Because they can afford to keep production costs lower because they're selling more of them. Market, they call it market equilibrium. So think about equal here. It occurs when demand and supply intersect and create a stable price. Okay. There can be shifts in the market, right? So if I drew you another line up here, so basically it's just shifting everything upward. Our price is going up even though the demand is low. So what we've had as Mopar people over the last, I don't know, 30 or 40 years, from what I can tell, and a lot of you all are older than I am, the market shifts. It moved up, okay? A lot of people are pulling cars out of fields now and selling them and asking a lot of money because the new market standard, a lot of people think is set by Barrett Jackson or Meekum. They see a Roadrunner sold for $100,000. Now they think all Roadrunners have to be worth $100,000 because I saw it on TV. It's not really how it works. It does actually, it can cause like a false ceiling of sorts in the market. But in reality, in Podunk, Arkansas right now, I could drive, I know where there's a 69 Super Bee at. Don't ask me where it's at. It's sitting out in some weeds and I could probably buy it for less than $2,000, but I don't have time to. Other items that are more universal. So example, carburetors. If you're a guy that sits around and wants to collect a bunch of Holley double pumper carburetors, I know some, we know some, you know some, or Edelbrock's or whatever. That universal product can be used on multiple applications. Okay, so there's a large group of available substitutes in that, but there's been lots of Mopars used in movies. They've been demolition derbied. Same as Chevrolet, same as Ford, same as everything. So availability, popularity, some of that stuff can also greatly impact economics. So the Mopar tax that I'm talking about, you don't actually always have to pay more for certain parts, but the price charged for new parts can sometimes be greatly more than it would for an equal product. A big block Ford intake is likely more than a big block Chevrolet intake. And it's just how it is. A big block Mopar intake, we already know, is way more than a small block Chevrolet intake. Those are just examples. So let me know what you think about the video in the comments. Obviously, not everything's an absolute, and I've tried my best to explain it, but I haven't been a school teacher in a while. So I appreciate y'all watching, and subscribe if you haven't. I'll catch you next time.